Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is, without a doubt, the greatest Arctic mystery ever told. We're looking at the lost Franklin expedition. Back in the mid-19th century, the world was frantically mapping its final frontiers. And the Arctic? Well, that was the ultimate prize. This is a story of grand ambition, absolute peak Victorian-era technology, and a chilling disappearance that still haunts historians today. It's the kind of narrative that really forces us to question our own reliance on technology when we're thrown up against the absolute extremes of the natural world.
So, what actually happens when an unstoppable empire meets an immovable climate? That's the core question we're unpacking today. We're setting the stage for the ultimate showdown of man versus nature. Because on one side, you've got the British Empire, literally the pinnacle of human engineering, wealth, and confidence at the time. And on the other, an environment so hostile, unpredictable, and entirely unforgiving that it completely defies conquest. It's a thrilling yet deeply tragic narrative of exploration gone terribly wrong. Let's get right into how this unprecedented clash unfolded.
Part 1. The Unconquered Northwest Passage. Picture it. It's 1845, and the British Empire is at the absolute height of its global power. They were bustling, fiercely confident, and virtually unstoppable. They dominated global trade and had the most formidable navy on the planet. But standing right in their way was the one colossal challenge they still hadn't conquered, the Northwest Passage. And you have to understand, this wasn't just about bragging rights or the glory of exploration. This legendary sea route straight through the frozen North American Arctic promised a massively lucrative, much faster connection between Europe and Asia. Unlocking it meant total dominance over global trade. The British Empire honestly believed their immense wealth and ingenuity could conquer absolutely anything. But the desolate, brutal reality of the Arctic environment was about to give them the ultimate reality check. 59. That was Sir John Franklin's age when he took the call to lead this monumental task. At 59 years old, Franklin was a highly respected naval officer. He had decades of polar experience under his belt. He wasn't some rookie. The guy was a seasoned, decorated veteran of the ice who had already mapped out thousands of miles of northern coastline. By putting him in charge, the Admiralty felt totally bulletproof. When Franklin took this on, he was stepping into what the entire British public believed would just be a triumphant, crowning adventure to cap off a long and storied career.
Part 2. Equipped for the unknown.
The sheer volume of what they brought with them is absolutely staggering. We're talking about two massive, state-of-the-art bomb vessels, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, carrying 129 specially selected officers and sailors. And to keep them fed and comfortable, they packed enough provisions for 3 entire years. They had advanced, heavy steam engines modified from railway locomotives, just to bash through the ice. They brought cutting-edge scientific instruments, heavy mahogany furniture, fine silver cutlery, and literally thousands of books. But right there, that highlights a fatal flaw in their approach. It perfectly captures the extreme hubris of an empire that believed heavy, complex Victorian technology could outmatch the frozen unknown. Instead of adapting to the environment, or, adopting the lightweight, specialized survival methods used by indigenous Inuit populations who had thrived there for centuries, they essentially tried to bring a rigid, comfortable piece of England right into the deep freeze. Crowds gathered along the harbor, cheering as the expedition disappeared over the horizon. It was this moment of supreme optimism and fierce national pride as the ships sailed out of the River Thames to all this grand fanfare. But the dramatic irony of their departure is just deeply chilling today, because as those crowds waved their flags, fully expecting these 129 men to come back as conquering global heroes, absolutely no one standing on those docks had any idea that they would never see a single one of them alive again.
Part 3. The final sighting.
Things moved pretty efficiently at first. In the spring of 1845, the crew enjoyed that triumphant departure from England. Just a few months later, by the summer, they had successfully crossed the Atlantic and reached the frigid waters of the Canadian Arctic. European whaling ships operating in Baffin Bay actually spotted the Erebus and the Terror. The majestic ships were just anchored there, waiting for the dense summer sea ice to break up a bit so they could push forward into the uncharted labyrinth of the passage. The sailors on the whaling ships waved goodbye. And that was it. That passing wave in the late summer of 1845 was the last confirmed sighting of the entire expedition by the outside world. After that, they simply vanished into history. Part 4. Trapped by the ice.
Minus 40 degrees. That is exactly the point where the Celsius and Fahrenheit scales meet, and it represents a level of extreme cold that is just fundamentally hostile to human life. As that incredibly brief Arctic summer faded out, the environment turned against them completely. Enormous, crushing sheets of pack ice moved in and permanently trapped both ships in a frozen vise. Temperatures plummeted to that freezing negative 40-degree mark, and they just stayed there. And to make matters even more psychologically devastating, the endless, disorienting polar night completely covered the Arctic for months on end, sealing these stranded men in a terrifying world of total darkness and bitter frost.
Our source material paints an incredibly grim, agonizing reality of those endless winter months. It reads, "The men waited, then waited longer, but the ice never released them." Despite all those decades of polar experience among the officers, despite the heavy steam engines custom designed to break the ice, and despite the 3 years of tinned food and mahogany desks, they were utterly, completely helpless. The absolute pinnacle of Victorian technology, the very best the 19th century world had to offer, was totally paralyzed by the silent, crushing grip of the Arctic ice. So we have to ask ourselves, when facing the unforgiving power of nature, where exactly is the line between grand ambition and fatal hubris? The Franklin expedition represents the ultimate clash between human exploration and an immovable climate. It stands as the stark, incredibly powerful historical reminder that sometimes, no matter how technologically advanced or overprepared we think we are, nature always has the final say. I really hope this explainer has sparked your curiosity about this incredible historical mystery and the lasting lessons it holds for us. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for exploring this fascinating piece of history with me today.